Welcome. My name is Charlie Arnott with the Center for Food Integrity. Thank you so much for joining us for this CFI conversation today. For those of you not familiar, CFI is a not-for-profit organization, and our sole mission is to help the food system earn consumer trust. Today, very fortunate to be joined by Susan Schwallie, Executive Director of Food and Beverage Consumption for the NPD Group. And for those of you not familiar, NPD Group is a leading market research and consumer insights company. If you've not been to their website or subscribed to newsletters, I would encourage you to do so. It's great information. It's a lot of fun to read. And if you're curious about what's going on in the minds of consumers or consumer behavior, they're a great resource for you. Susan, thank you for joining us this morning. Appreciate that very much.
Thanks, Charlie. Great to be here with you.
All right. So tell us a little bit more about NPD Group and your role there.
Yeah, absolutely. As you mentioned, we are a global insights provider. I've been focused personally working with the food and beverage industry for about 17 years now to help them understand where they should be placing their bets in the marketplace. We do that using all of our rich data resources, our industry expertise, as well as prescriptive analytics to help them make smarter decisions. And, one of the things that I love about it is that it's fast-moving, it's ever-changing, and NPD is actually in a really unique position because not only do we understand the food and beverage industry, the food service industry, but we track 16 different industries from tech to apparel to beauty to entertainment, and I think we're going to touch on some of those today here as we talk about homing.
Excellent. Great. Thank you. Susan is also a member of the new CFI Trust Insights Council. It's a group of consumer insight experts and social scientists who explore emerging trends and provide insight on strategy for the food system. So we're very grateful for her willingness to participate in that and her contributions. So during our most recent Trust Insights Council call, you talked about something that's kind of an interesting, perhaps unexplored phenomenon related to COVID-19 on consumer behavior. It's the trend of homing, and I want to spend a little time talking about that today. So tell us, what is homing, when did it start, and why, and kind of what are you seeing in terms of the macro trends related to homing?
Yeah, so, slowly we have seen a creep towards more of the foods and beverages that we eat being consumed in home. And it's happening a couple different ways. It's not only that for lunch and dinner that we're making more of those meals in home, but we're also bringing more and more of our restaurant meals into the home. So we're much less likely to go out to a restaurant and eat on premise. And delivery has been growing double digit at about 22%. Carryout is actually even bigger than delivery, but delivery is what we hear about in the media, the Grubhubs, the DoorDashes of the world. Carryout is almost twice the size of delivery, and Americans, we want to be home. Home is where the heart is, and that's been going on in food for a while. There's other things outside of food that I think have been driving that. There's some economic factors. There's the fact that we have Netflix. There's a lot of things. We can shop from our couch and get almost anything we want. But if I have to think about when did it really start, the tipping point I would say would be millennials and probably the Great Recession. So I don't know if you want to dive into that a little bit more, but they're one of the big reasons why we're seeing kind of this homing behavior.
So let's dig into that a little bit more. Tell me more about the beginning of the trend, what you saw after the Great Recession, and why millennials are particularly driving that trend that we're seeing related to homing.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you think about, 2008, millennials, the front edge of millennials were about 28 years old. Now, they were at peak consumption of restaurant at that. 18 to 34, you'll never eat more restaurant food than when you're 18 to 34 years old, and we see that across all sorts of generations. So as they were coming of age and really coming into those peak years, they hit that economic brick wall, which really forced them, as well as all of us, in home more often. And what we saw is with the recovery, millennials never gained back those levels, that restaurant usage that we would expect from previous generations. They just did not recover. So that's one kind of economic driver of it. But at the same time, the millennials were shifting what they valued in food. And in a lot of ways, that brought them back home. So generationally, they really were the ones that drove a renewed interest in fresh foods, store perimeter, transparency in terms of ingredients, clean labeling, free from diets, functional health. And it was, the home and the home food supply was much better positioned for a while to deliver on that. Now, we saw it play out in food service with the rise of fast casual. So Chipotle would be the poster child for this. So that was another reason, why we saw this homey instinct. And then you can't deny the fact that with technology, broadband, with the rise of e-com, with streaming, we can get a lot of our entertainment needs, our shopping needs. We have access to things in the home that 20 years ago we just didn't have. So there's a lot of reasons why people can be at home comfortably doing exactly what they want to do.
So you mentioned a couple of the other industries or sectors that are kind of playing into this. Talk a little bit more about what you see beyond food that's playing into the homing phenomenon. What else are you seeing? What other sectors is NPD Group following that are being impacted, or either being impacted by or driving the homing phenomenon?
Yeah, it's really fascinating. So our tech group tracks smart home. So if you think about things like smart entry, for instance, Ring, those products, growing double digit. Part of that is getting your package delivered or knowing who's showing up at your door. But it's also, kind of protecting your home and being able to stay connected with it even when you're not there. Smart thermostats, Nest, for instance, and there's many others now that can control your environment, whether or not you're there, and optimize what's going on. Related to our home environments, some of the things we see upticking in sales by our group that tracks housewares. In the home industry, we're seeing air care, so air purification, categories showing growth. So there's some things there that we also saw years ago around candles and scent, which is kind of creating a pleasant environment within your home. We also see video game streaming growing quite strongly. That's another area we track, and again, that's entertainment in the home.
Interesting. So now the wild card, right? And we're gonna date this call or date this recording because things are changing so rapidly. So this is being recorded on the 19th of March. Who knows what's going to happen today or on the 20th or the 21st?
Right.
But how do you see COVID-19 impacting what's going on with homing?
Yeah, right. This is immediately going to be out of date, and I'll tell you, in some areas, I actually do have some very early reads on some categories. Now, the latest data that I have on food service, what's gone on in terms of restaurant traffic and delivery, is only through March 7th. I'm sitting on tenterhooks, Charlie, because later today or tomorrow, we're going to get the week ending March 13th. And last week is the week where we expect that we're going to see a downshift in traffic and an uptick in delivery. I don't have that information yet. I'll tell you, through the week of March 7th, there wasn't a decline in restaurant traffic. We're right on the precipice of this, right? But I do have some information for the week of ending March 7th from our home team that looked at the same week a year ago and some surrounding weeks. I mean, we want to be careful that we're not catching some promotion that was going on last year and not this year.
Right.
But what we found there, and I'm just going to look down here for a second because I have a list. What we found that's growing in housewares, I think, is really telling to how people are thinking about being at home more often during this time. So we continue to see air care products, air purifiers, as well as water filtration and the filters that go with that upticked. We also saw home soda machines. So maybe, I'm going to be home for a while and I need to have my own supply, kind of going with the water. Vacuum sealers. So, one of the things that we have seen during other periods of challenge, and I got to be careful because I have nothing to compare this to. A recessionary period is not the same, but one of the things that we know is that people may be batch cooking. They may be planning for leftovers. I know personally, I've got my husband and my third grader home for every single meal 24 hours a day now, whereas I didn't have that before. So exponentially, what we're dealing with food has gone up. So vacuum sealers were something that didn't surprise me. Handheld specialty cleaning, you're going to be home more. Let's make this easy. And by the way, robotic vacuums are another area that have been trending up as we're home more. Sandwich makers, electric grills, electric pasta machines, electric rotisseries, and juicers. And I see that all around helping people more quickly make some of the really, really big behaviors that I'm sure we're leaning on more. Sandwiches, chicken, pasta. Think about what has been all over the media in terms of what has been wiped out on store shelves.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And lastly, this one really brought a smile to my face. Again, I got to be careful with the data year over year, but an uptick in ice cream makers and snow cone makers. So maybe that's that side of trying to keep a little bit of enjoyment, and boy, it could be about keeping the kids happy. And maybe your freezer's stuffed and you can't fill it with a bunch of ice cream. So we'll be keeping a really close eye on all of this to see how the trends fall out, but that's just some early reads of things that we're seeing.
So based on that, Susan, what would your recommendations be to those in the food industry as it relates to COVID-19? Where should they be focusing their attention? What kinds of consumer behavior do you anticipate?
Yeah, look, there are a couple things that I can offer up in this period of really unprecedented times. Obviously, closely monitoring the trends and what's going on as we see them in the marketplace is going to be key. But beyond that, I would say think about ways to connect with your consumer that probably is going to be around helping them gain some sort of comfort. I hate to say control during this, really unsettling time. People are stressed. People are under pressure. They're worried. Maybe they're, taken away from their loved ones. How can you help them feel a little bit better about getting through their day? And as I mentioned earlier, it's just the three of us in my house. So, there's houses with a lot more people, and all of a sudden, the stress on getting everyone fed and keeping everyone healthy is very, very real. So I think, if we think about food and beverage specifically, there's probably help people meet the core day-to-day needs of feeding the family. Then there's help people through indulgent and comfort. We know food plays that role. And then the third piece is help people maintain their health. And I think we're going to see a lot of interest around immunity support and also emotional support, like how to keep the spirits up. There's lots of trends in the health and wellness area already in food, providing those kinds of roles. But if you can really connect with people around helping with those three things now while they're at home and under pressure, I bet that's going to go a long way until we start to see some inklings of what are going to be the drivers and the trends coming out of this.
Great. So last question, realizing nobody has a crystal ball and we can't predict the future, but based on your 20-plus years of experience, what kind of long-lasting impacts do you think we're going to see in terms of consumer behavior? What do you think will stick in terms of the changes that we're seeing now as a result of COVID-19, and what changes do you think might take place?
Yeah, boy, I have to be really careful here.
Sure. Because
it's just, it's kind of a vast unknown. I would say it's probably safe to say that we'll see an acceleration of some of the things we're seeing around food and beverage. So, look, this might seem like a little bit of an easy way out, but clearly delivery and carry out have been the trend. And we're going to be leaning on that, and we already are with all the closures and the dining closures. I would also say that people are going to continue to look for ways that they can build healthy lifestyles, and it's going to shift more than just day-to-day wellness, like how do I stay healthy in this, and probably we're going to think really differently about that going forward. And I'm sure there's going to be a role for food in that some way. Is it around immunity? Is it around, how will it change the industry in terms of, higher level sanitation or contactless? But I just can't predict exactly where it's going to go, but those are definitely things that we're watching to see how it plays out, so we can help advise the industry and keep everybody moving in a positive way.
Excellent. Susan, thank you so much. Susan Schwallie, Executive Director of the Food and Beverage Practice for the NPD Group, has been our guest today. We really appreciate your time. Certainly a space we will continue to monitor, so don't be surprised if we ask you to come back because things are happening so quickly. Wish you and your family the very best as you adapt to the new reality. And we encourage you to log in to foodintegrity.org to learn more about CFI and the Consumer Trust Insights Council. Stay tuned for more from the Trust Insights Council, and thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Thank you, Charlie. Stay safe.
Take care.